Hello, I'm Mark Aspery and I'd like to welcome you to another CBA Zoom tutorial coaching session. Firstly, I'd like to thank Darryl Nelson for allowing the CBA the opportunity to feature this topic, and I'd like to tell you that Darryl has 4 one-hour DVDs out for sale covering the bear's head and other animals. This is what we are attempting to forge, and for this amount of detail with the cut mouth and the teeth, you'll want to be using either 1¼ or 1½ square stock. I'm using 1½ so you can see what's going on, and I'm using A36 mild steel, but a 1018 bar might just move a little easier for you. Just as a note, for the first half of the tutorial I'll be relying on slides as they make the most sense to me, and then for the second half, which is mainly dynamic moves, I'll be relying on video. That said, I had 2 cameras set up for this because the camera, my eyes and the tool all want to vie for the same view. So it does chop around a little bit, but I try to preserve as much of the information as you need to see. My stock length is around about 12 inches long. That is, the 1½ square bar is 12 inches long. I don't want more than that because it gets a bit weighty moving up to the vise. So I use tongs or a welded handle, in this case 1/2 inch round. That said, a stable vise will also go a long way towards making this a much more enjoyable endeavour. So let's get started. The basic shape, the pre-shape if you will, is very important. Too short or too long and you're going to have a different animal face. Let's take a look at some of those proportions. The pre-shape uses the size of the original parent bar, in my case 1½ square stock, and then we're going to base everything based on that measurement. So my taper is 1½ inch. That is the length horizontally of the taper, not the diagonal there. And then the height of the tip is going to be 2/3 of my height of the bar, so in this case 1 inch, and then the width is going to be 1/3, so in this case 1/2 inch. So my snout is 1/2 inch wide and about 1 inch tall. We know there are 2 ways to pull a taper. We can either squeeze the end of the bar out, or we can pull the edges back and create a bit of an upset at the base of the taper. And that's what I'm going to do here, because pulling the edges back will also prevent a little bit of the fish lips, and this is a big heavy bar, or at least keep the fish lips to a minimum. And it will also give me an upset right at the back of what will be the head and neck. And I'd like a little bit more material there to help with the ruff for the neck. If you do get some fish lips, don't cry about that. They're just, we can get rid of them later on in the forging process. Just try and keep them to a minimum. When you dress the jaw, I want you to dress along the bottom side of the jaw so that the lower jaw, is going to be slightly proud of what will become the nose or the nostrils. That is not anatomically the way a bear will look, but as we cut for the mouth and then cut for the tongue, both of those will upset and make shorter that lower jaw. So having it long now will leave you with decent proportions when you've finished. Let's have a look at a video of just making that forged end. I have to tell you that I am standing on a box, not quite a box, but a pallet at least. So I am elevated from my normal forging position, and that enables me to get that head right over the end of the bar and give it a decent whack. It's not hurting my shoulder lifting up on the hammer handle. So I'm going to work a little bit, work both sides, and then I'll probably upset the end to bring everything back and stop those fish lips from forming. And again, when I'm tamping it down, I'm trying to keep the lower jaw proud of the nose. So I'm holding it at a slight bit of an angle, and then I'm going to carry on with my forging. Again, when you dress the lower jaw, do so from the bottom of the bar, just trying to squeeze out that lower jaw, proud of the nose. I do brush to keep the scale off. It is texture if you drive it in, and we need texture, so if you left it there for a little while, I don't think it would be an issue for you. That is actually 1.5 inches. The camera angle is a bit cattywampus, by inch by half. So I am ready to sort of go to work. Notice I'm holding that at a slight angle as I do the upset to get rid of the fish lips. And just tidying up. There we go. So now that is the setup. We're looking at the setup of what will be the snout. So let's talk about that. Here's what we've just made. And now this is what we're going to do, is set up the brow. And that brow line is an important step in the process. So staying with our dimensions, I want you to take 2/3 of your taper. So in this case, that taper is 1.5 inches. I want you to lay off 1 inch. That's with the 1.5 inch square stock. You'll notice at this stage I'm holding the bar horizontally. And as soon as I've got some purchase here where it's not going to bounce up and down on the anvil, then I'm going to start lifting up on my bar just to give that snout a little more angle. And then once you've finished, I want you to just correct for any growth in width. Then the next job is to refine the snout and prepare the stock for forging the beard in the jawline later on in the forging process. So let's have a look at that. You'll notice that my fuller here, and I'm using the CBA level 1 matched fuller, so this is the bottom fuller, and you've got a handheld top fuller, both 1/2 inch, and you can see that they are held at a slight angle to the bear. I want this jawline to go back slightly. Try to leave the back of the snout here wider than the front. So you can see I'm trying to leave the back of the snout wider than the front. At the very least, don't make it thinner than the front. In this case, I'm not using fullers. I've just decided to mash the material down at the edge of the anvil. And this is my typical method. So I don't need to pre-fuller. And the errant hammer blows that you see here just add to the texture. So they don't seem to mind at all. And just forge it in as you would. Now we need to get ready to make our beard. In this lower right photograph, you can see I am working off anvil, if you will, as I'm making that facet along underneath what will be the cheek. I'm going to hold the snout on the anvil at about 45 degrees, and I'm going to forge a 45-degree facet along the jawline and across the top, of course. Let's have a look at the results of that. So here's my underneath the jaw. And that will become a beard. I don't want that to go away, but my problem is I do need to make the top of the snout half round. So I lie the nose or the snout flat on the anvil, and then I just change the angle of my hammer, and I try and get rid of these two lines and make it a half round on the top of the snout. The other thing you can do, of course, is get busy with your hot rasp. Let's have a look at the result there. You can see I've got a slight angle back to the cheek, which is what I wanted, and then I've got a half round to the top of my snout, and you can see from that top right photograph that the facet on the bottom of the jaw is 45 degrees to the head and is reasonably flat. Why does that matter? We're going to come along here with our handheld fuller, and we're going to drive this material in, and we're going to try and create this beard underneath the jawline. And if this is curved or not quite 45 degrees, that is going to become a little bit of an indigestion problem for us. So having that nice and flat really goes a long way to making this a much easier process. Another view of the same thing. So now what I want to do is have a look at actually making that brow line and dressing for the snout. Let's take a look. So the first thing I want you to see is I am holding that horizontally at this moment in time. Okay. soon as I've got something to purchase against, I'm going to try and lift up with my hand, my tongue hand. And then I'm going to dress, hopefully, maybe not, for any resultant swelling. So I'm using a guillotine here, just because I want to show you the fullering process. And of course, when you fuller, I want you to fuller from both sides of the bar. Don't just do all your work from one side of the bar. And again, you'll notice that there's slightly at an angle there. So I've got a cheek that's got a slight slope to the front. Leaving it thicker than the tip of the snout. Now we're going to go to the edge of the anvil, nice radiused edge. I'm going to work from both sides of the bar because the anvil is going to chill the other side, so I'm expecting to see a slight lip. There it is. And then we get rid of that. And that's the method if you use the guillotine. I'm going to show you the other method where I just mash it at the edge of the anvil. And again, that would be my method if I was just making this on my own. Holding it at a slight angle to the edge, and again I'm going to do a little bit of work and then I'm going to turn it over and work from the other side, which means that the angle is going to change from one direction to the other. There's my snout, and now I'm going to do the 45 degrees. Notice how I'm going to keep it held on the snout as I work my way up the jawline underneath the cheeks, changing the angle of the hammer. Do the other side. Change the angle of the hammer, come around the corner. And then just dress any discrepancies. Now we need to leave those lower facets in place as we take the top of the snout to a half round section. So I'm just changing the angle of my hammer here, knocking in those lines, just trying to create something that's going to be half round. And again, if we're having problems, we can go and get the hot rasp. Notice that the lower jaw is proud of the nose, and that is my finished preset. For most of the bold features of this and many heads, you're going to require a fuller. Mine is about 5/16 of an inch thick. It's about 3/4 of an inch wide, and I want you to note that the edges are half round. There's some variations to this theme, but that will be covered in a separate video on all of the tool making by Victoria Ritter and John Williams on an additional program. So let's have a look at what we're trying to do. I want to make the eye socket, if you will, and the top of the cheek, and I'm going to drive this in. It's important for me that we just use the edge of the snout and that we are basically covering just at the bridge of the nose here. So let's have a look at that. So you can see that here's the bridge of the nose, and I just want to make this piece, the fullering, about halfway up. We are going to come back to, this is the edge of our upset or our taper that we did, and I want you to come just past that. Let's have a look at it. So just past that, and then from there we're going to come down and create our beard. We're going to run ourselves out to the tip on both sides, and then when both sides are done, then we're going to come and make this little goatee. But the first job we're going to do is make the eye. So let's have a look at the goatee just while we're talking about it. So we're going to bring the eye It's deepest at the front. We're going to bring it out to the side just past that transition point, and then we're going to start moving down with our fuller. And at this stage on the first pass, I want you to hold the fuller at 90 degrees to the bar. Once you get round this corner, I want you to hold it 90 degrees to the facet, which is roughly 45 degrees to the bar. And that's going to give you your first pass. And that's going to look like this top left here. So you're not going to make the goatee as yet. I want you to get both sides equal before you make the goatee, so you can see what's going on. On our second pass, I want you to angle this back so that you're pushing the material towards the neck. And that's going to start making this ruff of the hair. So when a bear turns its head, it's got that little ruff there, just to the base of the head, or the top of the neck, if you will. And then I want you to start pushing that material around. As you come around the corner, you'll notice the fuller is leaving these striation marks, and I'm going to call that hairlines. And then we're obliged to come back down to our 45 degrees to the bar, or 90 degrees to that facet that was. And then we're just going to finish that off. Let's have a couple more photographs of the beard, and then we'll do it. So this is what I want you to do. Give myself a nice bold cheek. Bare cheeks or bare muscles in the cheek are absolutely massive. So don't make this too weeny. We're going to come down here. I want you to bring both up to the front, the same as this. You see in the top right photograph. And then we're going to go around the front of the jawline and create the little goatee that you see on the bottom photograph. So let's have a look and see what this is like hot. Just before we start, I want you to see that I'm holding this in the center of my vise. If I go one side or the other, the vise will rack and it will twist on the bar, and I won't be able to hold it solidly. So working in the center of the vise is important to me. Obviously below the top of the vise, we've got the box and the pin, which is going to limit the angle that you can hold this at slightly, but I like that 45 degrees. You may hear some people putting pillows underneath or other bits and bobs. I've never really found the need, but yes, I understand what they're trying to do. Let's have a look at the video. Just smoothing out a few lumps and the bumps. Take my time, give it a whack. And I want to look at it. Hit it, look at it. Is that where you want it to be? And then I'm going to move my hand or move the tool around the edge. Come around the offside. Again, get rid of the lumps and the bumps. Hit it. And now you've got to match it from the other side as well as getting in the bridge of the nose. So now you've got a couple of things to sort of match against. Hit it, look at it. Is that where you want it to be? And then start running it around the edge of the head towards the neck. Deepest at the front, tapering out to the sides. Don't make it a big channel around the side of the head. But we do need to establish a nice cheek line here on the front. So don't be skimpy on the depth at the front. Again, I want to show you that we're holding the tool at this stage 90 degrees to the bar. I have to confess that in order to get to the camera to get a good angle at this, I'm holding this out of position, upside down, with my hand on the other, going the other direction than I would normally like to. So if I look a little awkward, it's because I am. Here we are, 45 degrees to the head or 90 degrees to that facet. And you can see the striations here that will have the hair or represent the hair. And I just run that fullering line up the center of the jawline. So I'm split the middle of the snout right at the tip there. And you can see from this that that 1 inch that we originally had for our snout is soon disappearing. By the time you've rounded this end up and taken the beard off, it all goes away quite quickly. And I'm just using the hammer here to get rid of those hard lines on the bottom of the cheek. This is a little easier for me because I'm in position, so I can get after it a little faster. And now this time I'm going to go around the front of the jaw and just create the little goatee. Again, getting rid of some of the hard lines. And that marks the end of our sort of pre-shape. From here we start to go into the details of the forehead and the ears, but that will be on another section of these coaching sessions. So this is the end of the first session, and I will see you for the forehead, ears, etc. on the next session.